Subscribe for more. My name is Olivia Harrison, and I'm 37 years old. But I wasn't always this strong. 20 years ago, my parents threw me out like I was trash. I was 17 and pregnant, and that night, my life was changed forever. I remember standing in my parents' house, looking at the positive pregnancy test in my trembling hands. It was as if the world had suddenly stopped. I was terrified, confused, and alone. But nothing prepared me for how they would react. I went to them, holding the test, hoping for some sort of understanding. I needed them more than ever, but their response was cold, unforgiving. "You're lying," my mother said first, her voice cutting through the silence. No daughter of mine would be so common. But the second test confirmed it, and then the third. They couldn't deny it anymore. My father didn't raise his voice. He was never one for yelling. Instead, he walked with slow, measured steps to my room and came back holding the suitcase they'd bought for my supposed college tours. He placed it by the front door. "You have 10 minutes, he said, his voice as steady as ever. "Take what fits. Leave your house keys on the table." I stood there, frozen. I couldn't understand what was happening. "Dad, please," I begged, but it was useless. My mother didn't even look up from her manicure. "Don't call us. Don't come back. We'll tell everyone you're studying abroad." They were disowning me. They didn't even care that I was carrying their grandchild. The worst part was that it didn't matter to them. They had no room for me in their perfect world. As I packed my things, I looked at the family portrait on the wall. It was the one where we were all dressed in matching white shirts, smiling as if everything was perfect. My father walked over and turned it face down. It was the last time I would ever see it. "Our daughter wouldn't spread her legs for some boy and destroy everything we've built," my father said, his voice cold as ice. That was the final blow. My parents had never really seen me. They had never really known me. They gave me 10 minutes to pack 17 years of my life into a suitcase. I grabbed a few clothes, a necklace my grandmother had given me, and the $227 I had saved in my jewelry box. The lock clicked behind me as I stepped outside. Final. Irreversible. I was alone. I didn't know where to go. I had no place, no home, and no one to turn to. But somehow, I ended up in Riverside Park that night. I found a bench under the gazebo where Owen, the boy who promised to love me forever, first kissed me. I thought I could find peace there, but the cold and the loneliness soon overwhelmed me. I fell asleep with my suitcase as a pillow. It was the first time I truly felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. 3 days passed before someone came to wake me up. It wasn't a cop or someone who wanted to hurt me. It was a woman in her 70s, wearing a soft cashmere coat, with genuine concern in her eyes. She gently shook my shoulder. "Child, you're going to freeze to death out here," she said, her voice calm and comforting. I looked up, startled. "I'm fine," I lied, but I wasn't fine. I was cold, tired, and broken. "No, you're not," she said, studying my face and then my belly. Even though I was barely 2 months pregnant, she knew. She could tell. She didn't judge me. She didn't turn away. Instead, she just sat down beside me, on the cold bench, and held me. "Come," she said softly after a while. "Pierre and I need company for breakfast." Her car smelled like lavender and leather. It was a small comfort. The heated seats felt like heaven after days of sleeping outside. She drove us to Westside, to a house that felt more like a small estate. It had 8 bedrooms, but there was only one widow and a geriatric poodle living there. When we walked inside, Elena said something that hit me hard. "I lost my daughter," she said simply. "Car accident. 5 years ago." She was pregnant, too. I wasn't sure what to say. She led me to a room that had been prepared, not for me specifically, but for someone. A crib from Pottery Barn sat in the corner, and the closet was full of maternity clothes with tags still on them. "This is yours now," Elena said, her voice gentle. "No questions, no conditions. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Why?" I whispered. She touched a photo on the dresser, a young woman with Elena's eyes and smile. "Because Sophia would have wanted me to." I didn't know what to say. I was overwhelmed, but I knew one thing for sure: I was finally safe. And this stranger, this woman who had no reason to help me, had given me more than my parents ever had. That night, I slept in a bed for the first time in 72 hours. I didn't feel like I was just surviving anymore. Elena had given me shelter, but more importantly, she had given me a future. "You're going to be all right," she whispered as I drifted off to sleep. She was right. Little did I know, that night would mark the start of a new life for me, a life that I would share with my son. But, as I would later learn, there were still many battles ahead, and my parents' rejection wasn't the last twist of fate I would face. I stayed with Elena for weeks, but it felt like a lifetime. She taught me everything she could about surviving, about living with dignity, about how to be a mother when all you had was the strength in your heart. In those early days, I could barely keep my eyes open from the exhaustion of everything. But Elena's kindness and her wisdom gave me the strength to keep going. Elena didn't just give me shelter, she gave me a future. She helped me through every single step of my pregnancy. When I was scared, she held my hand. When I was in pain, she whispered words of comfort. She didn't treat me like some broken person in need of saving, she treated me like I was her equal. She even gave me a name, Olivia Rossi. I wasn't sure if it would work, but it felt good to not be the discarded Olivia Harrison anymore. For the first time, I had an identity that wasn't tied to rejection, to abandonment. Elena made me realize that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who show up when you need them most, the ones who care for you when no one else does. As my pregnancy progressed, so did the sense of peace in my life. Sigurd, the baby growing inside me, was all I could think about. He kicked at my ribs, and with each little movement, I fell more in love with him. Every time I felt a flutter, it was like a little reminder that I wasn't alone. I wasn't abandoned anymore. I had Elena, and in a way, I had a family again. The day Sigurd was born, Elena was there. She was the one who held my hand through 18 hours of labor. She was the one who whispered words of strength into my ear when I thought I couldn't go any longer. When I finally gave birth, when Sigurd was in my arms, Elena cut the cord and cradled him as if he were her own grandson. She looked at him and smiled. "He's brilliant," she said, though he was only minutes old. I can see it in his eyes. And even though I was exhausted, even though I felt like I had nothing to give, I knew she was right. I could see it, too. Sigurd was special. As Sigurd grew, it became clear that Elena had been right. He was brilliant. At just 9 months, he took his first steps. By age 3, he was reading. By age 5, he was solving puzzles that most kids his age couldn't even understand. He was extraordinary. I kept working with Elena, learning everything she could teach me. She didn't just run a restaurant empire, she ran a life of resilience. Elena had seen failure. She had known loss. Yet, she never let it define her. She showed me how to turn every hardship into an opportunity to rise, and she passed that wisdom down to me. I took on roles at the restaurant, from hostess to waitress, and eventually to manager. Elena trusted me. She didn't give me her business because I was desperate, she gave it to me because she knew I had the potential to lead. As I learned the ins and outs of the restaurant business, I began to feel more confident, more capable. Elena was teaching me how to run an empire, not just a restaurant. And I was learning. Sigurd was growing faster than I could keep up with. I was taking night classes to get my GED and online courses to earn my college degree. But no matter how busy I got, I always made time for Sigurd. He was the most important thing in my life. When Sigurd was 7, he started performing surgery on his teddy bears. He had learned the basics from YouTube videos. His tiny hands worked with such precision, it was as if he had been born to do this. The way he stitched the fabric with such care, I could see it then, the future of a surgeon, one that would save lives. And I couldn't have been prouder. At 10, Sigurd was reading my anatomy textbooks. At 16, he was accepted to Harvard Medical School. This was my son, the boy who had once been discarded by his own grandparents, the boy who had been left with nothing but love and care from the woman who took me in. I couldn't believe how far he had come. But I knew it wasn't just luck. It was hard work, determination, and most importantly, the love that Elena had shown us both. By the time Sigurd graduated from high school, his accomplishments were well known. He was offered early admission to Harvard Medical School. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment my son's brilliance and hard work were finally being recognized. But at the same time, it was the moment I feared the most. That's when they came back into our lives. Sigurd had just been named the youngest chief of cardiac surgery in the state, and the media had caught wind of his story. The headlines read, "Youngest doctor ever to lead a department and a prodigy in the world of heart surgery." Sigurd's picture graced the front pages of newspapers. His name was everywhere. And that's when they came. My parents. I knew it wouldn't be long before they showed up. They had abandoned me when I needed them most, but now, after 2 decades, they wanted something. They wanted to claim Sigurd. They wanted him, not as their grandson, but as their ticket back into the world they had always tried to dominate. They wanted to control his legacy. I was working at Rossi's when the email came in. It was a formal email, cold and detached, like they were writing to a stranger. "Dear Olivia," it began. "We hope this message finds you well. Recent news has come to our attention regarding Sigurd's remarkable achievements. As his grandparents, we feel it's time to reconnect." Reconnect? After 20 years of silence, they were now sending me emails, asking for access to my son? They wanted to meet him. They wanted to see their grandson, the one they had abandoned, the one they had rejected. They wanted him now that he was successful. They didn't care about me or about what they had done to me. They just cared about their image. I was furious. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in years, fear. Fear that they would get to Sigurd before I could stop them. Fear that they would manipulate him, turn him against me, and claim him as their own. I didn't know what to do. I was angry. But I wasn't helpless anymore. I had Elena's wisdom, and I had Sigurd. And I would protect him at all costs. This time, I wasn't going to let them take him. I wasn't going to let them control his future. That night, I called Lance Mitchell, Elena's lawyer. He had been with us from the beginning, helping us navigate the legal challenges we had faced. "I need you to check something," I told him. "I think they're planning something. I think they're trying to manipulate Sigurd." Lance didn't hesitate. "I'll get on it right away." The next day, he called me with news that confirmed my worst fears. "They've hired a private investigator," he told me. "They're following Sigurd, watching his every move. They're trying to get to him, Olivia. They want to be involved in his life again. They want to control his career, his future." But Lance wasn't just any lawyer. He was a strategist. He had been there for us through every step of this journey. And now, he was about to help me take them down, once and for all. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, replaying the email, the voicemail, my parents' attempt to manipulate Sigurd. It was all too much. The betrayal, the lies, everything they had done to me, to us. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them control Sigurd's life the way they had tried to control mine. He wasn't their pawn to be used when it was convenient. Lance's office called me first thing the next morning. "I've got everything we need," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. I'd dug into their actions, their movements. I've got proof they'd been tracking Sigurd, trying to make contact in secret. My hands trembled as I gripped the phone. "What are we going to do?" "We'll hit them where it hurts," Lance said. "Legally. They've made a massive mistake by coming after him. They've overstepped their boundaries. The fight wasn't just about keeping my parents away. It was about making sure Sigurd knew the truth. He needed to understand that family isn't always about blood, it's about loyalty, respect, and love. And Elena had shown him all of that. I decided to confront my parents head-on. No more hiding, no more running. I wasn't going to allow them to twist the truth, to pretend they were ever there for me or for Sigurd. The time had come to face them and show them what they had truly lost. The gala was just days away, and it felt like the perfect moment for everything to come to light. It wasn't just a charity event, it was the perfect setting for a showdown. 500 guests. Media coverage. The spotlight was exactly where it needed to be. Lance had arranged everything. The invitations had been sent out, not just to the usual elite of Springfield, but to the people who needed to hear the truth. I couldn't wait for my parents to walk into that room and realize that their carefully crafted image was about to be destroyed. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, and white orchids adorned every table. But at the very front, at table 1, sat my parents, dressed in the finest clothes money could buy, sitting like they were royalty. My mother wore a vintage Chanel suit, the one she'd saved for special victories. My father was checking his PC Philippe constantly, making sure he was in the spotlight, like they belonged there. And next to them, sitting uncomfortably, was Owen Blake, my biological father. The man who had disappeared the moment I needed him most. Sigurd's keynote speech was about to begin. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that everything he had worked for was about to become a public battleground. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Sigurd Harrison. The crowd stood and clapped as Sigurd walked to the podium. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He wasn't dressed in anything other than his surgical scrubs. The crowd murmured. My parents' smiles tightened. They didn't know yet what they were walking into. Sigurd took the microphone, his voice calm and steady. Good evening. I'm here to talk about family, he began. Not the family you're born into, but the family that chooses you when you need them most. The room went silent. I stood back in the shadows, my heart pounding as Sigurd continued. 20 years ago, a 17-year-old girl was thrown out of her home for getting pregnant. She slept in parks. She ate from vending machines. She had nothing except the life growing inside her. My father's hand froze on his champagne glass. My mother's face turned ashen. They knew who he was talking about, and I could see the recognition in their eyes. Then Elena Rossi found her, Sigurd continued. A widow with no obligation to help, no reason to care except that she understood what family really meant. Elena became my grandmother. She gave my mother shelter, dignity, and purpose. She gave me life. The screen behind Sigurd changed. A massive photo of Elena filled the wall. She was smiling, radiant, her eyes full of love. She had always been there for us. Always. Sigurd looked at the crowd, and then directly at my parents. And tonight, I'm announcing the Elena Rossi Foundation for Teen Mothers, he said, his voice steady and full of pride. We'll provide $5 million in initial funding, housing, childcare, and education for young mothers who are where my mother was 20 years ago. The audience broke into applause. My parents sat motionless, their faces a mixture of shock and fury. They had no idea how deeply they had been exposed. Sigurd turned to me, his eyes filled with warmth and love. Thank you, Mom, for everything you've done for me. And thank you, Grandma Elena, for being the one to show me what true family is. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Lance stood up from his seat, holding a folder in his hand. My parents didn't see it coming. As the applause died down, he walked toward the podium, his steps slow and measured. The crowd grew still, their curiosity piqued. Lance raised his hand and spoke into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I have something to share with you. Lance opened the folder, and with an air of authority, he began reading aloud. This is a legal document that was signed by Robert and Margaret Harrison on October 15, 2004. A document that relinquished all parental rights and responsibilities to Olivia Harrison and any children born or unborn. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. My parents' faces turned bright red. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her handkerchief, but there were no more tears. Lance clicked a remote, and the document appeared on the screen behind him. "This is your signature," he said, pointing at the bold letters. "You signed this. You legally disowned your daughter and her unborn child. You walked away from them." The ballroom was dead silent, save for the clicking of Lance's remote. The crowd began to murmur. Phones were out, recording the moment. The truth was out. Lance didn't stop. "But there's more," he said. "Let's talk about what happens when you try to claim someone's inheritance after you've abandoned them." My parents tried to stand, but they were frozen in place. They couldn't run, couldn't escape the truth. Lance pulled up another document, the will of Elena Rossi. "Elena Rossi left everything to Olivia and Sigurd," he said. "Every penny, every property, every asset. She made it clear that anyone who abandoned them would be permanently excluded from all inheritance and financial benefits." The audience was riveted. My parents were trapped. They had no way out. My father's face turned purple with rage. He stood, glaring at me. "You can't do this," he shouted. "This isn't over." But it was over. The documents were clear. The truth was undeniable. And when the security team arrived, Lance made sure my parents and Owen were escorted out of the ballroom, their heads hung low in disgrace. Sigurd stepped up to the podium once more, his voice calm but filled with power. "Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm here to celebrate family, the one I've chosen, the one that's been there for me. And now, I want to give back." The night ended with applause. Sigurd's words echoed in my mind. It had taken 20 years, but the truth had finally come to light. My parents had tried to destroy everything, but they couldn't erase us. Family wasn't about blood. It was about love, loyalty, and the choices we make. Sigurd and I walked out of the gala together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly free. The weight that had pressed on my shoulders for so many years, the fear of my parents' rejection and the cruelty of their abandonment, began to lift. As the cool evening air hit my face, I breathed in deeply. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Sigurd. I glanced at my son, his face still a mix of emotion, but with a spark of understanding that had begun to grow inside him ever since we'd started this journey. His eyes, usually so full of confidence and determination, were now softened with something else, relief. "Mom," Sigurd said quietly, "I've been wondering something all night." "What is it, baby?" I asked, taking his hand. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" About them." I squeezed his hand tightly. My heart ached for the boy who had never known the pain of abandonment. Sigurd had only ever known love, support, and guidance from Elena and me. He didn't understand the darkness I'd carried for so long. "I wanted to protect you," I said, my voice soft. "I wanted to make sure you had the life you deserved, without any of the pain I went through. And that meant keeping them out of our lives. I didn't want them to hurt you." Sigurd was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I'm glad you did. I've never needed them, Mom. I've always had you." That was all I needed to hear. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. The media coverage of the gala went viral. My parents' humiliation was everywhere. News outlets reported on the confrontation at the gala, the documents, and the way they had tried to manipulate Sigurd. The story spread like wildfire, but for me, it wasn't about the attention. It was about setting things right, about making sure my son knew the truth about what had happened, and why we had built our family the way we did. But the most surprising thing of all was what happened to my parents. The fallout from the gala wasn't just a scandal, it was a full-blown crisis for their image. Harrison Industries' reputation took a massive hit. The stock price dropped by 30% in a matter of days. Investors started pulling out, and the media had a field day with the story. They had been portrayed as hypocrites, as people who claimed to value family while abandoning their own flesh and blood. As their world crumbled around them, my parents were forced to sell their mansion at a loss, their once pristine lives turned upside down. It was a kind of karma that felt almost too good to be true. But the real shock came when I received an unexpected call. Lance had been working tirelessly to ensure that my parents faced the legal consequences of their actions, and now it was time to take the final step. I sat down with him in his office, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "Olivia," Lance began, "I've just spoken to the board of Harrison Industries. They've made a decision. Your father was voted out as CEO." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man who had tried to control everything, the one who thought he could manipulate everyone, had been removed from the company he'd spent his life building. The power and prestige that he had once held were slipping away faster than he could grasp them. "That's not all," Lance continued. "The board is investigating several financial irregularities. Your father's actions over the years have left a trail, and it's starting to unravel. The IRS has already been notified about the discrepancies in their tax filings. They could be facing serious charges." I stared at him, processing what I was hearing. For the first time, my parents were facing the consequences of their actions. They had built their empire on lies, on manipulation, and on the backs of others. But now, everything was coming crashing down. "Do you want me to pursue legal action?" Lance asked, breaking my thoughts. I shook my head. "No, Lance. They've lost everything already. I don't need to add to their misery." Lance nodded, understanding. "I'll make sure it's all documented. We have the evidence we need to protect Sigurd and you." For the first time in years, I felt at peace. The burden of my past had been lifted, and I knew Sigurd would never have to carry it. Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. Sigurd was busy with his studies, his medical career already beginning to take shape. He had a future ahead of him, one filled with limitless possibilities. And as for me? I had finally found the peace I had always longed for. The restaurants were thriving, and Elena's legacy lived on in everything we did. She had built something beautiful, not just with her businesses, but with the love and care she had given me and Sigurd. But life had a way of throwing surprises our way, and one of the biggest surprises of all came when I received a call from an old friend. "Olivia, it's Karen. I've been meaning to call you for a while. I wanted to let you know that I've been reading about the foundation and everything you've done in Elena's name. I want to say how proud I am of you." Her voice was warm, but there was something else in it, a kind of sadness. "Thank you, Karen," I said softly. "That means a lot to me." "I know it's been years," Karen said, "but I've been following your story, and I think you should know something. Your parents, they're planning something. I'm not sure what, but I think they're planning to come after you again. You need to be ready." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight with tension. Karen hesitated before replying. "They've been quietly contacting people. They're trying to rebuild their reputation, and I think they see your success as a way to do that. They'll try to manipulate you again." I swallowed hard. I thought I was done with them, thought I had closed that chapter of my life. But now, I wasn't so sure. "I'll keep an eye on it," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "But I won't let them take anything from me or Sigurd. We've been through enough." It wasn't long before my parents made their move. They reached out through their lawyer, sending formal letters demanding visitation rights to see Sigurd. Their arguments were weak, their claims legally unfounded. They even tried to claim that they had been wronged by the public exposure of their abandonment. But the truth was out, and it was too late for them to rewrite it. Lance called me with the news. "Olivia, they've filed for visitation rights again. But they're only doing this to try to get back into your life, to manipulate you. They don't care about Sigurd. They want something from him." I was done. I wasn't going to let them use my son to rebuild their broken lives. That's when I made the decision. I called Lance and told him to prepare for court. It was time to make sure my parents could never come near us again. We would fight this to the very end. The legal battle was long and draining, but in the end, we won. The court ruled that my parents had no right to any form of visitation with Sigurd. The documents they had signed, relinquishing all parental rights, were ironclad. They could not contest it. They were legally out of our lives for good. When the ruling came in, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It was over. As time passed, life moved forward. Sigurd continued to thrive, excelling in his medical career and preparing to change the world with his skills. I focused on the foundation and continued to expand Elena's legacy. We helped countless young mothers, offering them the support and love they deserved. The future was bright, and it was all because of the choices we had made, the ones that had led us to a family built on love, not blood. In the end, I realized that the true meaning of family isn't defined by genetics or last names. It's about the people who choose to stand by you, no matter what. And Elena had shown me that all those years ago. I could hear her voice in my mind as I walked through the halls of the Elena Rossi Foundation one quiet morning. The walls were lined with photos of young mothers, their faces full of hope. These were the women we had helped, the ones who had found a safe place, a second chance, just like I had. Family isn't about blood, I muttered to myself, remembering Elena's words. It's about presence. I had made it my life's mission to carry that truth forward, and I wasn't doing it alone. Sigurd had stepped into his role as a future leader, not just in the world of medicine, but in the world of making a difference. He had a fire in him that reminded me so much of Elena. He understood the importance of giving back, and he didn't want to just save lives in an operating room, he wanted to change lives in a real, lasting way. The foundation was thriving. We were helping more young mothers than I could have ever imagined. The scholarships, the housing, the child care, we were providing the tools for women to stand on their own 2 feet. We had created a real legacy in Elena's name, one that would continue for generations. And Sigurd? He was just getting started. But as the months passed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creeping in. Even though the battle with my parents was over, there was always the lingering thought that they might try again. Their defeat had shaken them, but I knew they were resourceful, and they hadn't been brought down forever. It wasn't just about me anymore. Sigurd was flourishing, and I had to protect him, no matter what. As the foundation grew, so did the attention we received. More people, more eyes were on us. Some of it was positive, but with success came the vultures, people who saw the foundation as a way to profit, to take what wasn't theirs. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. My parents' downfall had left a void, and someone would eventually try to fill it. The challenge, it seemed, was never going to be over. One morning, as I sat in my office, going through donations and preparing reports for the upcoming gala, I received an unexpected call. It was from Lance, and his tone was grave. "Olivia, we've got a problem." I sat up straight, my heart skipping a beat. "What's happened?" "They've found a way in." "Your parents are behind this," Lance said, his voice tight with frustration. "They've hired someone to infiltrate the foundation. They've been reaching out to donors, trying to redirect funds. They're trying to get back into the picture." I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just some small effort. This was deliberate. My parents had found a back door into the foundation, and it was through the very thing we had worked so hard to build, the trust of our supporters. "Who's doing this?" I asked, my voice low. "We don't know yet," Lance replied. "But we're tracking it. I'm going to stop them before they can do any real damage. But I need you to be careful. This could get ugly." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Just when I thought I could finally breathe, just when I thought we had escaped them, they were back in our lives, this time, through a more insidious method. They were attacking our foundation, our legacy. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. My parents wanted back in, and they would stop at nothing to make that happen. I spent the next few days working closely with Lance and the rest of our legal team. We had to make sure the foundation's assets were protected. The threat wasn't just financial, it was personal. My parents had already proved they were willing to do anything to get what they wanted, and now, they were targeting the very thing that mattered most to me, the future I had built for Sigurd, and the hope we had given to so many young mothers. But this time I wasn't going to wait for them to strike first. This time I was going to act before they had a chance to ruin everything. I arranged a meeting with the board of the foundation, and Sigurd was there too. We were stronger than we had ever been, and I knew we could handle whatever came our way. The room was tense, but there was a sense of unity that felt different this time. This wasn't about defending ourselves. This was about taking the power back. We've caught them trying to divert funds, Lance said, laying out the details. They've hired someone to pose as a potential donor, trying to build a network of influence. They think they can manipulate the board and control the flow of donations. Sigurd, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. I want to be involved in this. I don't care what it takes. We can't let them use us anymore. It ends now. I looked at my son, his eyes burning with determination. He had grown into a man who understood the importance of standing up for what's right. And I knew, deep down, that we were ready to face whatever came next, together. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, investigations, and audits. Lance worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering evidence and making sure every corner was covered. We started to see the full extent of my parents' scheme. They had tried to reach out to multiple board members, offering help and trying to create alliances that would allow them to regain their influence. It was manipulative, cunning, and deceitful, exactly what I had expected from them. But this time it was different. We had the upper hand. We had the law on our side, and more importantly, we had each other. Then, the moment came. It was time to confront them once and for all. I called a meeting with my parents. Lance was by my side, and Sigurd stood with me, unwavering. This time, there would be no turning back. We've been watching you, I said, my voice steady. We know what you've been trying to do. And it ends now. You're not welcome here anymore. My father sneered, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. You think you've won? He spat. You think you've taken everything from us? We'll get it back. This is just the beginning. I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of finality. It's over. You made your choice. You gave up your family for your reputation. Now, you'll lose both. Lance stepped forward, holding up the documents that would end this once and for all. This is the final court order. You have no claim to any assets of the foundation, and you're legally barred from any further attempts to manipulate or contact Olivia or Sigurd. The air in the room was thick with tension. But my parents knew it was over. They couldn't fight this. They had no leverage anymore. As they walked out of the room, defeated, I turned to Sigurd. He looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding. You were right, Mom, he said softly. Family is about the people who choose you. And I choose you, always. I smiled, a sense of peace washing over me. It had taken so many years, so much heartache, but now, we were finally free. The foundation continued to grow, and we expanded our efforts to help even more young mothers. Sigurd completed his residency, and soon, he was making waves in the world of heart surgery, just as I knew he would. He was living the dream Elena had seen in his eyes all those years ago. And as for me? I had learned that life is about choices. The choices we make today shape the future, and I had made the right ones. My family, my true family, was built on love, sacrifice, and loyalty. No blood test could ever define what we had. As I stood in the quiet of Elena's old home, looking at the portrait of her that still hung on the wall, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had given me everything, and now, it was my turn to carry her legacy forward. Family wasn't about blood. It was about presence. It was about choosing love over fear, support over rejection, and trust over betrayal. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey, from the darkness of abandonment to the light of building a family of choice. The story of Elena, Sigurd, and myself is a reminder that family is not defined by blood, but by the love, support, and loyalty we choose to give each other. We've faced betrayal, manipulation, and heartbreak, but in the end, we've found something far stronger: true, unconditional love. If you've ever faced hardship and found strength in unexpected places, or if you believe in the power of chosen family, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your story is not over yet. Keep fighting for what matters. Keep standing up for what's right. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own family and the choices that shape your life, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories about overcoming adversity, finding strength, and creating the life you deserve. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts or your own story. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, your family is who you choose, and love is the strongest bond of all.